Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Adventurers Club of Los Angeles. My name is Rich Mayfield. I'm your first VP. Mayfield 1211. I'm your first VP this year, Programs Chair, and we're here doing interviews because of COVID. And tonight we have Alan Feldstein, member 1094. Alan Feldstein, 1094. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. And before we get started, I have to say something to, first of all, cheers.
Cheers. Drink.
To all the members who are out there. I'm sitting in the club for the first time in a long, long time. And you, Andy, Alec, everybody have done an absolutely incredible job with fixing this place up.
Thank you.
It looks spectacular. And you guys, I know, are working your asses off, and it shows. And it's so nice to see new enthusiasm and new blood making changes. So kudos to you guys.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. A lot of hard work. You know, Brian's out there cleaning and redoing exhibits all the time. Alex in here all the time helping out. Andy, our tech guy. You know, we really do appreciate that you see the work we're putting in. I think the place is looking pretty good,
It's looking very good. And as soon as everybody can come back because you're going to really enjoy the new look of the club.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for that vote of confidence. So, again, we're live, right? Members are watching live. They can comment in there. So, So if you have any questions or comments, make sure you throw them in that chat. And at the end, we'll do a little Q&A session. And if you like our channel and what we're doing here, definitely subscribe to our channel. That helps us out. So let's get started. So, Alan, you're a lawyer, huh?
I am. Was.
So in addition to being a lawyer, you're also a studio owner and a safari operator and what else?
That's enough.
That's enough?
Yeah, and a member of the Adventurers Club.
And a member of the Adventurers Club. So you started out...
So I started out as a lawyer. I'm still licensed to practice law, but as I tell people, being a lawyer is like being in the mafia. Just when you think you're out, they suck you right back in. But I have tried and continue to try not to practice law, and I've been successful at doing that for a couple of years now, pretty much.
Do you practice law for your own businesses, or?
Yeah, I do, but, and I have one or two clients who just refuse to acknowledge that I now own a safari company, which is my main, which takes up most of my time. It's my passion, my main focus and stuff. So if I was gonna introduce myself, it would be safari operator, studio owner, lawyer, in that order.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive. I mean, I think everybody wants to be a safari owner, right? Like that's a dream of an adventurer.
It's funny you should say that, because there's been a couple of instances, one I remember in particular where I was being deposed in a case, and this lawyer started screaming at me because I didn't know something, and he goes, "Why didn't you know?" And I said, "Because I was in Africa." And he looked down at his notes, he looked up, he looked down, and he goes, "God, I wish I could say that." And I go, "Yeah, most lawyers do." So yeah, I meet a lot of lawyers who go, "God, I really wish I could do what you do." And I say, "You can. You have to change your lifestyle and, you know, make some sacrifices, but you know, it's all about following your passion." I mean, and that's one of the things I think about the club that's so great. The members follow their passions, and that gets them off the beaten path. And I think that's what's really, you know, really important for people to do. It's actually how I started the company, because I was a lawyer and I had a case in Washington, D.C., and I had young children at the time who were my responsibility on the weekends. So I would take a red eye on Wednesday night from LAX to Washington, D.C. I would get in Thursday morning at 6 o'clock. I had an arrangement with a hotel. I could check in early. I would sleep for 2 hours. Then at 8 o'clock in the morning, I would start, I was doing some lobbying. So I was working the Hill. I was meeting congressmen, senators, attending fundraisers and all this stuff. And then at 6 o'clock at night, I would fly back home that same day. So that I could be home Thursday night, so that Friday morning I could take my kids to school and pick them up and spend the weekend with them. So I used to do that once or twice a month. And so I racked up 400,000 frequent flyer miles.
Wow.
And so I said to my wife, "We can go anywhere in the world. Where do you want to go?" And she said, "You know, I've always wanted to go on a safari in Africa." And I said, since I'm the planner of the family, I said, "Great, let's go." So I spent months planning this trip. We went to Zanzibar and Tanzania. Zanzibar is part of Tanzania. Went to Tanzania, and on the first day we're driving through this park, and Kumbi, I'll never forget his name, our guide goes, "Oh, there's giraffes." And like a dumb American, I'm looking straight out the front window of the vehicle, and I go, "I don't see them. Are they really far away?" And he goes, like this, and I turn around, and 20 yards away are like 4 giraffes there. And as my wife says, they had me at Jambo, which is hello in Swahili. So,
So that was your first African experience?
That was my first African experience.
You went with your family for a safari? And
just my wife and I.
Is that the tattoo that you have, the giraffes?
So interesting that you noticed that. So I have always believed being a lawyer is a profession, not a business. And even though many lawyers have tattoos, I would never have gotten a tattoo as a lawyer. Just personally, I didn't think it was a professional.
Just got to roll those sleeves down, right?
Yeah. But when I finally decided 2 years ago that I was done being a lawyer, I got this tattoo. And yes, this is a giraffe, which is the first animal I saw, and Mount Kilimanjaro, which on my second trip, I went back to climb Mount Kilimanjaro and successfully summited, came back down, and then my wife and I went up into the Mohali Mountains above Lake Tanganyika to track chimpanzees. And at the lodge was the manager, and I were having a beer one night, and he said, "When you're not here, what do you like to do?" And I'm an avid kayaker. I teach kayaking, actually, or used to teach kayaking at UCLA. And I said, "I like to kayak." He goes, "Really? So do I. Do you want to go kayaking tomorrow on Lake Tanganyika?" And I went, "Yeah." So we became good friends because of that. So he and I stayed in touch, and he says, there are no kayaks in Tanzania. There's no kayaking in Tanzania.
So he just happened to be the one guy in Tanzania that had a couple kayaks.
He had one kayak, and it was...
Yeah, a tandem one?
No, it was funny. He had one kayak that some guy had just brought and abandoned. So when I met him the next morning to go on Lake Tanganyika kayaking, since I'm an instructor, I have very safety conscious and a safety checklist. Mm-hmm. So I said, and his paddle was 2 wooden canoe paddles duct taped together.
Okay.
So I said, "Where's your life vest?" He goes, "Don't have one." "Where's your bailer?" "Don't have one." "Where's your paddle float?" "Don't have one." So I go, well, let's see. The water's not cold, so I don't have to worry about hypothermia. I'm on a lake. There's no current. There's no wind, so that's good. So, okay, I'll stick close to shore, and I'll be. I said I ran through the security checklist.
What else is in that lake? An African lake, and all you got to worry about is it's cold or not?
And there lies the story. So out I go, and I turn left, and I'm paddling, going, "This is great. I'm paddling Lake Tanganyika." And I look back over my shoulder, and Steve is going like this, and I go like this, and he goes, and I go like this. And now he's like jumping up and down, screaming, "Come back, come back." So I paddle back to him, and I said, "I'm fine. What's going on?" He goes, "You're not fine. You got to go right. You can't go left." And I go, "Why?" And he goes, "See those rocks down there? Those aren't rocks. Those are hippos, and there's crocs there. You were headed in the wrong direction." Now, that was a safety issue I had not had on my checklist.
That wasn't on the checklist.
That wasn't on the checklist.
For the UCLA instructor, right?
Yeah, exactly. We don't have to worry about hippos and crocs in Marina del Rey. So, but we became good friends after that. And he emailed me, and he says, "I'm thinking of building 2 kayaks." And he showed me his design. And I went, "Good for you," and an experienced paddler, terrible for tourists. So he and I worked together on the design. Mm-hmm. And in 2008, I decided to take my children to Africa as a graduation gift. My daughter had graduated from college and my son from high school. And he had left the lodge and started a ground operation. So he put our safari together for us, and he loaded up these 2 kayaks that he built. So we went on safari. It was great. And then we ended up on the coast of Tanzania, and he and I became the first people to ever kayak off the coast of Tanzania. And it was that experience when I sat down with my kids. I said, "Now that you've graduated," dad advice, "follow your passion. Don't worry about money. Do what you're passionate about. The rest will follow." And as I'm saying it, I'm going, maybe I should listen to my own advice. So I came home, said to my wife, "Hey, guess what?" She goes, "What?" I go, "We're starting a safari company," and that's what I did 11 years ago.
So I have a question about that story. You said when you went the second time, you went to go track chimpanzees. Was that just another safari thing, or was that?
Yeah, it was part of a safari, but it was a really unique experience. This is near, Mahali is near Gombe, where Jane Goodall does all of her research. And there's a troop of chimps there that have been studied by Kyoto University for over 50 years. And it's amazing. I run into people all the time who have worked there, and they go, "Oh yeah, Orion, I know him." And they're not talking about people; they're talking about chimps.
Yeah.
And it was an incredible experience.
So how'd you get hooked up with that?
That was part of the safari experience that I did some research and said, that looks cool, let's go do that.
So you're definitely one of those guys, and we got a lot of people around the club like this that are researchers, and they can find the good experiences. You know, they know that they're there, you know, and it's not anything special. It's just being able to do the research and find those opportunities for yourselves.
Yeah, 100%. And that's how I run my safari company. You know, anybody can sell you the typical, I'll call it the milk run safari, but I will go to Africa 3-4 times a year, and I always go for several reasons. Number one is I do a lot of giving back in Africa. So I funded the college education of a Masai warrior to go to college. I built a water well for the women of his village. I'm on the board of trustees of the Cheetah Conservation Fund. But the other reason that I go is I want to try something new. I want to find new experiences that I can say to my client, you got to do this, and not many people do this. You know, for example, in South Africa, there's some musicians that I've met, and you go to their house for lunch, and they play for you, and they talk about playing music during apartheid, you know, what that was like, or you know, we'll do a culinary class, or you know, or we'll go zip lining, or we'll go kayaking, or you know, whatever it may be. But a lot of different experiences, some cultural experiences. In Tanzania, I always stop for lunch at a village, and there's a group of women who are either divorced or out of abusive relationships, and they're a cooperative, and they cook lunch for my clients. And so, but you get to help cook lunch too, and it's a great spread. So, you know, it's those kinds of really, I try and find those really unique experiences for my clients to enjoy.
So you've curated this group of experiences where you've personally done each one of these experiences, and then I imagine when you're there, you're like, hey, this has been really cool. By the way, I need your contact information because I might send some people after.
Yeah, because one of the other things that I tell my clients is I don't send you anywhere or have you do anything that I haven't been or done myself. You know, so a lot of people want to go to Africa. A lot of people, those same people are afraid to go to Africa. It's like, oh my God, you know, it's so different that they feel comfortable when they go, okay. Especially they feel comfortable when they show up, you know, at a village and they go, oh, you're with Alan? Oh, great, come on over. You know, we know Alan, so it's great. And
So what does it actually look like running/owning? Like what is the structure of a safari company? Like what does it look like?
That's a really good question.
I mean, if I wanted to start a safari company, it sounds like the most important piece is having that library of experiences that you can send people on. So when you talk to your clients, you can say, what are you into? And you'd be like, perfect. Here's your 2 weeks, here's your 3 weeks, however long they're going to stay. Boom, boom, boom. So that's one part, is planning it out for them, right?
The other part is having great people on the ground there who will take care of my clients.
So do you actually employ someone on the ground that kind of sticks with them the whole way through?
I contract with ground operators all over Africa. So I do custom safaris in 12 different countries in Eastern and Southern Africa. So, you know, for example, if you're landing in Kenya, Lillian's picking you up, you know. If you're landing in Tanzania, Donna and her crew are picking you up. If you're landing, you know, anywhere else, somebody else will be, Cappy will be picking you up in Namibia. And so I know that the biggest fear people have is getting off the plane, and is somebody going to be there or I'm going to be stuck? And
I have to figure out which taxi is going to rip me off.
Exactly.
You know?
So when they walk off the plane and they see a sign with their name on it, all stress goes away, you know?
Right.
And especially when someone, and I mention Lillian a lot because right now, you know, they don't have any work. They don't have unemployment insurance. They don't have stimulus checks. You know, they're hurting. So one of the things I've done with Lillian is I get on WhatsApp with her at 10 o'clock at night, and she tries to teach me Swahili. So yeah, so.
So your employer is a Swahili teacher?
Mimi husoma ongea Swahili kidogo. Yeah, so I'm trying to keep her busy by just giving me Swahili lessons and stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun.
So what out of all the safari trips that you put together, what do you think your favorite like experience set was? Like, not necessarily for you, but like what?
Yeah.
You know, in terms of you've had some clients and you put together packages. What do you think can you describe your favorite like package that you put together for someone?
It's almost like asking who my favorite child is, but I will tell you this. I mean, what really gives me the most pleasure is when people come back and say, they don't say that was a great trip. They say either that was the greatest trip I've ever been on, or that was a life-changing experience. When I hear that, that's great. I will tell you that one of the most popular trips that I do is to go see gorillas in Rwanda. And Rwanda is just this incredible country. And then from there, we fly to Tanzania to see the great wildebeest migration. And that's an incredible experience.
Is that, I think I might have seen videos of that lately.
Yes, because it's in Kenya right now, and they're moving south across the Mara River into the northern Serengeti.
And they just pour off the cliffs and across the river and stuff like that.
It's an amazing sight.
So how do you take people to see that? Because that's how Simba died.
Yeah, well, you go to there's 7 points of crossing on the Mara River, and your guide, they all talk to one another, and everybody's getting intel about where that is going to be, and you park there, and it's funny, they'll start all gathering, and then they're waiting, and you're like, come on, and then finally one decides they're going to jump in the river and go, and then they all follow. And it's an incredible experience. And Rwanda, besides the gorilla experience, which I've done several times, the country itself is the most wonderful, transformed country. They went through a genocide 26 years ago. I'm actually famous in Rwanda.
Really?
Yeah, there's a show on PBS called, oh my God, I just went out my brain, but it's a travel log of countries, but instead of having a narrator, they have the head of state of each government. So they've had like the King of Jordan, the Prime Minister of Poland, and the President of Rwanda to lead the trip. The Royal Tour, it's called, on PBS.
Oh, that's cool.
So I was invited to the premiere in New York, and I went, and President Kagame was there, and they showed the film. It was wonderful, and then he said a few words, and then they asked for questions. So me being the shy, retiring type, raised my hand, and I said, President Kagame, I've had the opportunity to visit your country. It's wonderful. I have 2 questions for you. My first question is, how as we as Americans can we better promote Rwanda in the United States? My second question is, since you've done such a great job in your country, if I could get you a U.S. birth certificate, would you consider being our president for a while? And the crowd just goes crazy. And President Kagame, as a consummate politician, goes, I didn't hear the question, and goes to move on to the next question. But Peter Greenberg, who was the narrator, goes, wait a minute, I love that question. Let me repeat it for you. And you could see Kagame just going, oh, God. So anyway, he repeats the question, and President Kagame, again, being a great politician, says, that's a very difficult question to answer. We have enough problems in our country, and then moves on. What I didn't know is that Rwanda national television was filming this whole thing.
Yeah.
4 months later, I happened to be in Rwanda.
And they're like, you're that guy.
I would walk into a hotel, and the waiter would go, I know you. And I go, no, you don't. He goes, yeah, no, we've met. And I go, no, we haven't met. He goes, no, I know you. And then I'd pick up my phone and I'd show them the video of me asking the question, and they would just go bananas over it. They loved it and stuff.
That's so funny.
It was great.
So were you operating tours in Rwanda before they had the genocide?
No, this was well after.
So after is kind of when you got into that region.
Yeah, I started 11 years ago, and I started probably doing Rwanda, maybe 8 years ago.
Huh. Yeah. So what does the gorilla experience look like? Like
So-
what like you say, oh, you're going to go see some gorillas. Like, how does that happen? How do you make sure that a gorilla doesn't kill me?
Gorillas could care less about you. I've been bluff charged by a silverback.
They cared about you then.
Just to show who's boss.
Yeah.
But what you do is you enter the park. I mean, they are their national treasure. And the guides there who work for the park service are passionate about, they love what they do. So you meet up with your guide and you're in a group of no more than 8 people.
Okay.
And they put you with like physical ability. So you and I wouldn't be in the same group. You'd be going higher up the mountain than I am, because there's about 12 gorilla families that live on the mountain, some higher, some lower. And off you go. And there's trackers already up there, and they're on radio contact with your guide.
So there's Rwandans up there.
Yeah. Well, this is where
stalking these gorillas the whole time.
They're tracking. This is where Diane Fossey did her research.
Okay.
So, in fact, there's a guide there who was her personal porter, and he's an older guy now. I have a great picture of him and I. He goes, "You and I, we're silverbacks, because we're older." But anyway, they find the gorillas, and you leave your backpack, your food, your water, everything about 50 yards away, and then just with your camera, you hike in, and there they are. And I've seen baby gorillas carried with their mom. I've had, gorillas sit next to me and munch on bamboo shoots, and it's kind of, in fact, the funniest story is the last time I went, I took my wife for the first time to see gorillas, and I was really nervous because she hears me talking about it so much. I go, I hope I didn't oversell this experience. So we're walking in to see the gorillas, and she's behind me, and I turn around just as our guide says, "Move to your left." And my wife looks, and because a mom gorilla and her baby took my wife and gently pushed her aside so she could catch up with the rest of the gorillas.
Wow.
The look on my wife's face didn't oversell it one bit,
What do you think they're thinking? The gorillas, I mean.
They're used to seeing us there. They know we're not a threat. So pretty much they could care less about us.
That has to be weird, though, because I imagine, the trackers, they may or may not know that a tracker's there, right?
No, they know. In fact, the trackers there's a language. I mean, I have video of one guide telling me, how he calls to the gorilla saying, "It's okay," because this is what Fossey studied. And so, she definitely learned language, learned gestures and stuff like that. And these guys all know this and have learned all of this. So they're able to, communicate either verbally or not.
But, there's one guy up there and they're hanging out and they're just kind of tracking him, right? And they're like, fine, that's that guy. He's always there.
Yeah.
But then, every once in a while, like 8 strangers just kind of come up and kind of look.
Yeah.
Like, because gorillas aren't, it's not like a pack of dogs or even wildebeest, where wildebeest are, they're cows, right? They don't think.
Yeah, no.
Like gorillas are definitely thinking, and every once in a while there's just 8 weird people that come up and...
And like one time when I was in Uganda, this silverback gets up and he's walking down this path, and I'm standing on the path. So he gives me one of these, and when that happens, all you do is you look down and be submissive. And then he walked right by me. Probably I was looking at him. I was looking him in the eye, which is a challenge. And so he was like, "Okay, let's see how tough you are," I go, "Not so tough." And so, we move on. So I think in their mind, as long as you're not threatening their food or threatening their children, or interfering with them in any way, you're supposed to stay 25 yards away.
Like that's what the
rules
are, the policy.
But that doesn't mean they can't come close to you. So I've literally been sitting there photographing, and all of a sudden I'm sitting in an area where there's some good vegetation they want to eat, so they'll plop themselves down and
They
eat.
ever interact with you? Like take your camera,
No, no, I've never had that experience. There is a famous video you can find where there was this guy sitting there, and this gorilla started grooming him, going through his hair and stuff, and he was just loving it. And I go, God, I'd love to have that experience. But for the most part, no. They're just
That's
they
interesting.
do their thing.
Because other primates definitely, other habituated primates interact with people.
Chimps. So my chimp experience in Mahale was interesting.
This is another experience that you offer on your safari?
Well, I can't guarantee this is going to happen, but my wife was laughing hysterically because we were observing this troop of chimps, and there was Christine, was her name, and she has her baby, and we're across a dry riverbed. And she starts putting fruit in her mouth and then smiling at me like, hey, how are ya? And it's like really bizarre.
Like with the orange?
She was like flirting with, exactly.
Yeah.
She's like flirting, and, but you really do, I tell people, if you don't believe in evolution, go hang out with chimps or gorillas for a little while. They're 97% genetically the same as we are. I have some photographs of Guiculu, who has since passed away. She's a chimp who had a deformed hip, so she couldn't have children. And most of the time when that happened, she'd have just been kicked out and left to die. But she became the spinster aunt. And so when the women chimps were grooming themselves and each other, she would take the babies and go play with them. And I have a series of photographs of her rocking a baby, holding him by his ankles, and just like we do with our kids and stuff, and just all this. And then I'm gonna get choked up because it was so moving. Mom comes and grabs the baby chimp to take it away, and Guicula just lays down on the ground, and just, you could see the sadness in her eyes. It was just, it was incredible. And so they think, they feel, they know.
It is amazing. And the other thing that's interesting to me is, what do you think the intelligence gap between us and them is?
Well, in this day and age, probably not so much.
But if you were to put an IQ on a chimp,
That's a good question. I don't know the answer. They can teach them nonverbal skills. There was Coco the gorilla who could learn words and stuff like that. So I think it depends, on how long you work. But
And then look at the broad spectrum of animals that are out there, right?
Yeah.
The difference between us and them is so small, yet it's so pronounced in terms of where we go as a society and where we are on this planet.
But you see, I've spent a lot of time out in the bush, and I've seen how elephants react in their family situation and stuff. And no, they're not on the same intelligence level as we are by any chance, but they still have a hierarchy. They still have personalities. They still, they like that one, they don't like that one, kind of thing. And you can see that, and I see it a little bit, but the people I hang out with over there, they go, oh yeah, I know that elephant. Pain in the ass,
Nobody likes him.
Nobody likes him. Literally, it's like that. So there's, in the animal kingdom, there's a lot of personality. Think about all the dogs,
Oh yeah, for sure.
They all have different personalities and behave differently, and it's the same.
And dogs
out there.
compared to chimps are way smarter.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So your favorite experience was, or the most life-changing thing is that dual experience of seeing the gorillas and then seeing the wildebeest migration.
Yeah, but there's been a lot of, what I tell people is people go to Africa for wildlife. That's what I went for. But what brought me back are the people of Africa. As my wife says, there are people who have nothing who love to share. And they really do look at it as a community. Even during this whole COVID thing, there's no fighting about whether to wear a mask or not wear a mask. Everybody's in this together kind of thing. And I tell this story, Patrick, who's the Masai warrior, he's like my son, who I sent to college. He was up minding his herd one day of his goats and cows, some of which are mine. And this woman drives up, and she gets out of her car, and she's just pissed off. And she's stomping around, and he goes, what's wrong? She says, I'm just very upset because you people have no electricity, no running water. This is horrible. How can this happen? And he says, well, where are you from? And she says, oh, I'm from America. And he says, well, first of all, I'm Kenyan. And second of all, I feel sorry for you. And she goes, what? He goes, yes, I feel sorry for you because you have so much stuff. So all you do is worry about stuff. I have no stuff. I have nothing to worry about. I wake up every morning, I have a view of Mount Kilimanjaro, my children are well fed, they go to school, they're healthy, they're happy. We all get together as a village, we sing, we dance. We have nothing to worry about because we don't have to worry about stuff. And it's those kinds of lessons that I've learned, and I think also some of my clients have learned, that really is one of the reasons I'm so passionate about Africa. You know, these are people who have been subjected to colonialism, to exploitation, and all sorts of things, but they're just the warmest, friendliest, and it's not Tanzanians, it's not Kenyans. I've had this experience in all 15 countries in Africa that I've ever been to, and you know, I'm not naive to know there's probably bad apples out there, but
yeah,
for the most part, it doesn't really exist, and it's wonderful.
So that being said, have you had any bad experiences there?
With people, no. I've had some interesting adventures.
What do you mean interesting?
So back in December, I was with Steve, my ground partner. We were looking at some properties in southern Tanzania. And
what was this for? Why?
Just looking at properties to send our clients to, some camps and lodges to send clients to. So that night, the night before we're supposed to leave, fly out, it pours. I mean, it rains and rains and rains. And so the next morning we get up early, quickly eat our breakfast, get in the car, and we drive, and we get to a river we have to cross. We're not crossing this river. So we wait until the water subsides a little bit, and our driver goes, I can make it across. And I'm thinking, I really don't want to get swept down the river in a vehicle, so you drive across. Steve and I strip down to our underwear, and we wade across the river, and we get to the other side. The vehicle gets to the other side, all's good. Get back in the car, off we go. Now we get to the second river crossing that we have to do, and there is no way we are ever getting across this river. And then, for reasons I will never understand, our driver, I guess he was worried about traffic, decides to pull off onto the side of the road. And the car sinks into mud up to the door handles. So now not only are we not getting across the river, we're not going back either. So we get on the phone and we're calling all the camps on the other side of the river to send a car out to meet us. They can't get out of their camps. They're flooded in as well.
It's all satellite phone, by the way?
No, in those days it was cell. Yeah,
cell?
This was 2016, I think.
So by 2016,
we had
everything has cell phone.
So we then called the Tanzanian National Park Authority, like, you know, our National Park Service rangers, and we tell them, look, we have a plane to catch and we have to make it, so we're gonna walk. And they go, no, you're not. And I go, well, we have to. You go, you cannot walk in a national park. It's not allowed. And the reason it's not allowed is because there's like lions out there and leopards and stuff like that.
They'll come and get you, huh?
And so we say, well, so 40 minutes of negotiations, they say, okay, you can walk 6 kilometers to this point, we'll pick you up. And I said, okay. So in those days, this is, even though we had internet, a lot of paper goods. I had 30 pounds of brochures that I was carrying. Steve had been kayaking, so we had all this kayak gear, and off we go.
These were just brochures for places that you'd visited?
Yeah. So I could hand out to people.
30 pounds, man.
I could hand out to people and stuff.
Okay.
So off we go, and as we're walking, we're clapping our hands, we're singing, we're being as loud as possible, because we'd seen lions the day before.
They're there.
They're there. We didn't run into any, fortunately. So 6 kilometers, there's the vehicle. Yay! With a broken axle. So off we go for another few kilometers, and we finally, and as we're walking, I should say, what should be flying overhead but our plane, leaving. So we've now missed the plane. So I'm not going home quite yet, I think. So we get to this place, this woman who was about this tall but was a general, starts ordering people around, and we get in the back of the vehicle and they take us to the National Park headquarters there, and we got cleaned up, sort of. We were just covered in mud, and they fed us, which was lovely, but no plane. So Steve, who is a miracle worker, great logistics guy, starts getting on the phone, and finally there's one plane where a guy is flying back from another point to Dar es Salaam, the major city, and they're going to divert him to pick us up, and which is great. But you have to understand, this guy is not happy because he wants to go home, basically.
Right.
And so he doesn't like being diverted. So he lands the plane and literally, like out of a movie, he doesn't turn the engines off. He opens the door and he's taxiing, and here we are running.
You get
with
to the
our,
door, he pulls
with
forward a
our
little
gear,
bit.
throw our gear into the plane, jump in, close the door, he takes off. Then he turns around and he looks at us, and literally we are covered in mud. We are dripping mud and dirt all over his nice clean plane that he just finished cleaning. Needless to say, I said, I will buy you more than one beer, just get us back. So we got back to Dar es Salaam that night. Next morning I was able to fly home.
So now, whose plane was this?
It's a charter company that we use over
Okay.
there.
So like, how do plane flights work? How much do they cost? Like, because it's like, I don't know an American airline that American Airlines wouldn't.
No,
right?
these are
But-
bush planes. They're charter. You know, they're
Yeah.
11-seat Cessnas, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I mean,
so how much does that kind of flight cost?
Well, it probably costs us a few hundred dollars to do
Okay.
it. You know, they're like charter flight. You know, they're called basically scheduled charters. So they have a schedule where they're flying to all these airstrips. You know,
and you can
all
jump
over.
on for a couple $100.
You can jump on for a couple $100, yeah, or more depending.
So you just have to be connected with all these charter companies and know what their routes are. And
yeah, and that's a really good point. Is that a lot of people go, oh, well, I planned my own trip to Europe. I planned my own trip to South America and all that. And I go, yeah, you can do it.
yeah, you can get on kayak.
You can plan a trip to Africa, but let me ask you a question. What happens if something goes wrong? Who
Yeah.
are you going to call? And they go, I mean, it's not like I don't like this hotel, so I'm going to walk down the street to the next hotel. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You're out in the middle of the bush. So I explain to people, you really need somebody who can handle logistics for you. I mean, there's been times when I've been called at 3 o'clock in the morning because, a charter flight, the plane broke down. And so what are you going to do?
Right.
Well, I can get on the phone and make those arrangements. Those people would have just been sitting in an airstrip all night long, and that's no fun, because it's not like sitting at LAX where there's 10 restaurants and some shopping to do. I mean, it's,
So you've got your guys on the
That's-
ground that are helping them, right?
Yes.
But you're also here supporting the people in case something goes wrong. You pick up the phone.
I
at
tell
any
them
time
I should always be your first call, because then I'm calling who I need to call.
Right.
Or I'm speaking to their guide to really understand what the situation is,
So when everything's not locked down, how many trips do you normally have out a year?
I have trips running every month of the year. More in July, August, September, less in
That seems like the worst
December.
time to go to Africa.
No, the weather's great, and
Really?
that's when the migration is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I would think that it'd be super hot in the summer.
Now, see, that's a misconception with people that in East Africa, you're only 4 degrees off the equator. So it's like 75 degrees pretty much all day long. In Southern Africa, you're not yet into
Oh, it's winter.
you're getting into
Yeah.
their winter, which is hot. Like December is hot in South Africa. January is very hot in South Africa. So again, that's part of what I do is people go, I want to go to Africa. Where do you want to go? I don't know. Well, when do you want to go?
Yeah.
So when you want to go, what you want to see, what you want to do, what you want to experience, and all those factors go into me saying, okay, then we should go here, we should go there.
So what I would like, I'm just thinking of this because
Yeah.
this sounds amazing. I would like the nicest hotel imaginable in the most remote, hard to reach place.
Okay.
Can you think of a spot that
I
fits
can think
that
of
bill?
several, yeah.
That's just like
Yeah.
the safari
Like in
experience.
Ruaha and Sulu in southern Tanzania, which is not as visited as northern Tanzania.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and there's some beautiful places there. And
Like
you're out-
beautiful hotels.
Well,
Like-
they're not hotels.
Okay, well, lodge, what is it?
Camps. I mean,
What's a camp?
They're tented camps.
Okay.
But beds, comfortable beds, toilets that flush, hot showers, great food.
Air conditioning?
You don't need it
Oh, that's right.
because it's only 75 degrees.
I mean, I can rough it, right? I've roughed it for many a night.
Right.
But I mean, when I think of like
But
the ideal thing,
real
like
high-end, real high-end luxury camps. There's some places in South Africa I can think of, Marataba, Madikwe, Dulini camps that are just magnificent. They have air conditioning.
Let's talk about food. Where do you think, what area or what region has the best food? Because when I'm traveling, I like to experience whatever food's going on.
Well, so food really caters to Western taste. So there's a two-part answer to that question. Good food depends on who's running the camps. You know, they have good food. But if you're really a foodie, a culinary person, then I want to take you to South Africa because Cape Town is like one of the foodie capitals of the world.
I feel like that's just a big city, though.
It is, but incredible food. But yeah, I mean, I've been out at some. You'd be amazed at what some of these guys can do out in the middle of the bush with 3-course meals that are beautiful and stuff, and some great food that you might normally not eat, like kudu.
What is kudu?
It's like a I don't want to say a deer because it's not that, but it's a gazelle. It's a gazelle kind of thing. So there's kudu, there's oryx. You can eat warthog.
Is warthog like boar?
No, it's not as gamey as boar, but it's good.
Okay.
I happen to really like kudu. I think kudu's fantastic, and they make it in these great sauces and stuff like that. So yeah, there's good food there.
That's interesting.
It is incredible how difficult to run a camp in the middle of the bush and make sure you have enough food. Because like if you run out, you don't go down to the local supermarket, So you have to make sure your supplies are coming in, on a regular basis. And if something breaks, what do you do? And that sort of thing. And again, that's when I go and look at a camp, for example. I'm always talking to the staff. I'm talking to the manager. I want to go look in the kitchen. I want to see how you guys operate.
Basically, you're running like a risk assessment.
I'm kicking the tires. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, have you been to this restaurant? I forget what it's called, but it basically only serves wild
Carnivore.
In
Nairobi.
You already knew what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Is it good? Is that a good experience? Or
It is. It's a little touristy, but you know what? People don't understand. Somebody say, "Well, I don't want to do something too touristy," but the reason it's touristy is because it's so fun and it's good experience.
Yeah.
So it's in Nairobi. Yeah, I've had python there. I've had zebra. I've had crocodile. I've had kudu. I've had pretty much a lot of different meats. Yeah.
The carnivore restaurant in Nairobi.
Yep, world famous.
That seems like it might be a good first stop.
Well, it's funny you should say that because people say, well, how do you get to Africa?
It's a good question. How do you get to Africa?
And I say by plane, but there's 3 major international hubs. There's Nairobi, Kenya, there's Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, and there's Johannesburg in South Africa. And I love to get...
What about like Northern Africa, like Cairo?
Yeah, you could, but not where I'm sending
Right.
you. These are places that are good for a safari. In Nairobi I love taking people to Nairobi because you're tired, you've flown all day, so the next morning I'm going to take you to the Sheldrick Elephant Orphanage, where you can go watch baby elephants that have either been abandoned or their moms were killed by poachers, or a lot of times these babies fall into wells and they have to be rescued, and the mom is abandoned and left them, and so they rehabilitate them at this orphanage. Then they take them to basically a halfway house where they get more socialized with a herd of elephants out in Tsavo, and then they get released back into the wild. Then I take you to the Giraffe Center, where you can actually kiss a giraffe. And then I take you to Kazuri Beads, which is a women's cooperative that makes jewelry.
Is that where you're...
No, this is a gift from Patrick's wife. And then I take you to Karen Blixen's house. So Karen Blixen wrote Out of Africa.
Okay.
And so where her house was, that's where Out of Africa.
So what was Out of Africa?
It's a movie with Meryl Streep and Robert Redford that I totally tell you to watch. It's the most romanticized version of Africa and safari and stuff.
Yeah.
And based on sort of true facts. I won't say true
So
story.
what is traditional safari? Because I feel like it's almost on the level like tiki. You know, like what is tiki? You know, like if Ken Hudson was here, I'd be like, what is tiki? Where did tiki come from?
Yeah.
Where did safari come from? What is the origin of
Safari is Swahili for journey, for a trip. That's what
okay.
that's what safari means. And really think about Hemingway, think about Teddy Roosevelt. And what they did was they would go to Africa to hunt, and they would bring with them everything. They'd bring beds, they'd bring a bathtub, they'd bring a bar, they'd bring all their foods, they'd bring all their liquor, they'd bring everything. And they would just set it up in the middle of the bush, and then they would hire trackers or somebody, you know, like Dennis Finch Hatton, who's the character in Out of Africa, to go guide them and scout so they could go hunting. Today, we don't shoot guns, we shoot cameras, but it's the same thing. It's just that the bar, the bathtub, the food, the beds, everything just happens to be there.
It's already there.
It's already there. And that's really, you know, so Kenya is probably the first place that had safaris.
Is there a place where you can take a bath looking out over the plains and like see giraffe? And
if you go to my blog, there's a picture of my wife in a bubble bath on the deck of a lodge in the middle of the Zambezi.
That sounds like a great place to get drunk.
And it is a great place to get drunk. In the middle of the Zambezi River, you know, watching elephants come down to drink. Yeah.
And you can make that happen for people.
Easy. Yeah.
Like we could just go to your blog and be like, I want to do that, that, and that. And you'd be like, you can't do that one, but I can make all those happen.
It's funny you should say that because I get a lot of people go, okay, I've done my research. Here's what I want to do. I want to see the Great Migration. I want to see Victoria Falls. I want to go to Cape Town. And then I want to go to the Masai Mara. And I want to see the gorillas. And then I want to go to the beach at Zanzibar.
Okay.
And I go, okay, how long do you have?
2 weeks.
Yeah, and I go, that's like saying, okay, so I want to go to Washington, D.C., then I want to go to New York, then I want to go to Florida to Disney World, then I want to fly, go to Vegas. You can't do it all.
Yeah, it's too much.
So that's when part of what I do is, okay, let's start, and what's your budget, you know? And so what I tell people is let's start narrowing and prioritizing, and then we can put something together.
So first question, what is the optimal like trip length, do you think?
You know, most
4
of my
weeks?
trips are about 2 weeks.
2 weeks? That seems like...
most people, Americans, that's all they travel for.
That's how they think.
But I've had people go as short as 8 days, and I've had people go as long as 35 days.
Yeah, I like that 35 days.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, it takes so stinking long to get over there.
It
And
does.
that's the worst part,
It does.
right?
It
Like
is.
the plane rides are the worst part.
It
right?
is. It's a
Unless
long
it's a bush plane, you know, that's
right.
cool. You
Yeah,
know, that's
but
fun.
no, getting to the continent is a long haul.
You know, if it's 2 days on either end, which it is.
No, it's one. But
Well-
one going and 2 coming back. Depends. Like I fly either through Europe or I fly a lot through the Middle East. And through the Middle East, it's 2 days.
Yeah. So that's just a bummer. So the second question is what are the budgets? Like what's the low end of budget to go for, we'll say 2 weeks?
So there are lots of trips where there are group tours.
That's the cheapest.
And I don't like group tours. And the reason that I don't like group tours is I went on a group tour for my first safari. And as I tell people, if I could have fed someone to the lions, I would have fed her to the lions. And you have to remember, you and I, we go to Europe, we go to Italy, let's say, on a group tour, you know, and we don't like each other. You go, Alan, where are you going tomorrow? Oh, I'm going to the Colosseum. Great. I'm going to go to the Vatican.
Yep.
I'll see you later. But in Africa, you're in a vehicle, and you're in a vehicle with someone.
Yeah.
True story, my first safari, we're with this group. We come across a pride of lions, and they're big cats. And what do cats do most of the day? They sleep. You know, so they're lounging around, the male's on his back with his paws up, and, you know, but if something walks by, then it gets interesting. So we're sitting watching these lions, and we're really quiet, and it's just kind of beautiful to be out there, and from the back of the vehicle I hear, I'm bored. I want to go back to the lodge. And that's when I said,
I want to feed you to the lions. So
then
this
things
gets
will get interesting. Exactly. So that's why personally, my company, we only do custom trips for people. So it's your
yeah,
guy.
I mean, but group's efficient, right? But you're at their pace.
And and there's no divergence from the schedule. And when they say we're leaving at 8:30, we're leaving at 8:30. Whereas with you and my guide, he goes, when do you want to leave tomorrow? Well, I like to leave at 8:30. Okay. And then all of a sudden you say, you know what? I'm going to have another cup of coffee before we go. No problem.
Yeah.
So that's the trade-off. And it is a trade-off.
So to your point, it is a great experience. It's not a group experience. It's not a cheap experience.
I like that.
But
I like
what's
that
the
line.
cost?
A great experience, not a group experience. So I tell people,
Because I feel like you were prepping me for like the sticker shock.
no, it's all over the map. But here's what I tell people.
Like, I just
but here's
kinda
what
wanna
I
get a
tell
range,
people. Yeah.
range.
So I tell people that a good way to plan for my custom trips is somewhere between $600 to $800 a day per person. That is everything. That's all your food, your accommodations, your vehicle, your guide, your park fees, your internal African flights, your transfers, your cultural experiences. You never reach into your pocket for anything except maybe some drinks, tips, and souvenirs.
But not your flight to Africa.
That's the only thing it doesn't cover.
Okay.
So, and people go, well, that sounds like a lot. And I go, okay, fly from LA to, before all the lockdown, fly from LA to New York, rent a hotel room, buy 3 meals in New York City, buy tickets to a Broadway show, take taxis everywhere. You're starting to get.
So you said $600 to $800 a day per person.
You're starting to get, not as much, but you're starting to get up there. And I'm flying you to certain places too. So those charter flights are included as well.
Right.
So my trips are basically all inclusive.
And I'm just wondering, because we're doing a deep dive, right? This isn't just a commercial for your company. Like people want to know why you do this. How do you figure out those prices? Are you basically putting together a trip and seeing your costs and tacking on 20% or whatever it is? Or
I put a package together for the people. So and so it's a one price, And some people say, well, how much are the hotels? How much are they? I go, I can't do that because like certain hotels.
Because then they're going to start picking it apart.
Well, not only that, but it's like if I use this hotel, then the charter flight's cheaper because they're closer to the airstrip, And so it's all that sort of, There's a lot of balls that we juggle to put all the pieces together.
But I will say, people do like to know if, they tell you, I want to do this.
Yes.
Right? And I want to do this and this and this. Well, one of those things might be driving the price up.
And I'll tell them
But it's not that important to them.
Exactly.
They told you they wanted to do it, but it's not worth it to be an extra couple $100 a day.
100%.
So how do you deal with those people?
I love those people, and I'll tell you why. Because to me, planning a trip I want them to enjoy the experience of the planning. So it's a collaborative process. So they may sit there and say, well, I want to do this. Oh, that's too expensive. Okay, well then we could stay here, or maybe we cut out a day here, or maybe we, like gorillas, for example.
Is that the most expensive thing to do?
Permits are $1,500 a person.
What?
Yeah. But I see where the money goes. It's not going into some politician's pocket. The people who live near the gorillas, they have schools, they have clinics, they have Wi-Fi, everything paid for by the government. But you sit there and go, wow, okay, so let's go to Uganda instead.
How many
permits are $700 there? So those are the kinds of things that we talk about.
Interesting. $1,500 a day for a Rwandan permit.
Just for a permit to see the gorillas.
For one day, for one person.
Yep.
To go in and see the gorillas, $1,500.
Yep.
Wow.
It's
so
not
how many
cheap.
people do you think do that a year? Because that's another thing.
Thousands.
But that's not a lot.
No.
So 1,000, right? So that's what, $1.5 million a year?
Yeah, they make more than that.
$3 million a year?
I think they make.
But it's not it's Yeah,
no.
but in terms of like what you need to sustain, like a region, right? Like $3 million for 2,000 people.
Yeah.
Or $4.5 million if you let 3,000 people in. But 3,000 people is close to 100 a day. So I don't know.
Yeah.
That seems like a lot.
No,
yeah.
I would say that's about right.
Whew. But again, that's not like in terms of like what are they doing with this money?
They're using it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what's
4.5
great
million
about,
isn't a
that's what's
whole
great
lot.
about the Rwandan government is, they don't have the same problems that other governments,
How do you think that they got that way? Because I mean,
because of the genocide.
and you think that basically hit the reset button and everybody's like, no more screwing around.
So if you talk to Rwandans today, if you ask a Rwandan, are you Hutu or Tutsi? They'll look at you cross-eyed. They go, I'm Rwandan. And there are probably certain people that still harbor strong feelings, but for the most part, they have reconciliation courts and villages and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's a very young population. A lot of them were born after the genocide or were babies during the genocide. But there isn't a single Rwandan that's not been impacted by the genocide. But when you talk to them, you realize we will never, ever let that happen again. And that is the philosophy of everybody there. And they're a very equal society in terms of gender. You'll see a road crew and half the crew will be men and half will be women. They're just very forward-thinking people, very entrepreneurial and stuff. So it's voted by the World Bank as one of the best places to invest in Africa. So they're not going to let anything screw that up.
That's a high price to pay to clear the slate, though.
It is.
You know.
And what I do take my clients to is to the Genocide Museum and Memorial there. Mm-hmm. And it is incredibly powerful because you learn that nobody is innocent or was innocent. I mean, the Catholic Church, there were priests and nuns who killed people. You know, there was, it was like,
well, it's
the country
crazy, right?
went insane.
Because it was a grassroots genocide, right? It wasn't like the Holocaust where it was organized, but
Yeah, and the sad thing is there's a great book by General Dallard called Shake Hands with the Devil. So General Dallard was the UN peacekeeper there, but was not allowed to do anything. In fact,
he just had to watch.
Pretty much.
That's what
much.
UN.
Yeah, pretty much.
In
fact,
drink for this one.
If you read at all anything about Clinton's presidency, to this day he'll say one of his presidency's greatest regrets was that he didn't do anything for the Rwandans. And the reason was, for a large part, is that we'd just gone through a bunch of stuff in Bosnia and that area, and we didn't want to get involved again, and hey, this is a shithole country, so why should we,
Well, it's so fast too.
It happened.
It's not like you could drop a laser guided bomb
on
a couple spots and it would stop.
No.
It wasn't, there weren't death camps.
No.
They weren't, putting
no, there's
people in
just
the
people
ghettos.
hacking each other with machetes.
Just all over, so what do? You can't stop that. What could we have possibly done to stop that?
And the stories are, it'd be like your kids and my kids used to play together. You come over to my house for a barbecue, and then the next day, I'm slaughtering you.
Yeah.
And it's unfathomable, but it happened.
What do you think? Well, I know you weren't there before and after. You were just there after. But what do you think sparked it? Like you said, they collectively lost their minds, you know?
I don't know enough. I know that, there was a lot of it political and a lot of it of the haves and have-nots, Mm-hmm. I don't want to get into a political discussion here, but, in our country we have this great wealth disparity and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. And, no, we're not going to go have a genocide here, but sort of in many ways similar in the sense of,
Aren't we? When did Rwanda happen?
25 years ago,
It's not like it's ancient history.
It's not, 26 years ago. So, yeah, I don't really know. I don't think I'm an expert enough to comment on it. But
that's crazy, though.
But it is crazy. But it's an amazing country. And when I took my wife there a couple years ago, she was blown away because she expected a city that would be sort of run down. It's spotless. There's not a piece of trash anywhere. And the reason for that is on the last Saturday of every month is Umuganda Day, which is National Service Day. If you're between the ages of 18 and 65, you are obligated, and it's from the president on down, to clean your neighborhood. Or to fix windows for your neighbor, or to do something to make your community look better. Just think if we did that here, you know, it'd be phenomenal.
That's crazy.
Never happened, but it would be great if it happened here. But because of that, I mean, I remember driving with our guide, and we're driving along from the gorillas back to Kigali, the capital, and the car in front of us threw trash out the window. And our guide followed him, and when they stopped, he got out of the car and he walked up to them. And he said, "What are you doing?" And the wife was mortified. She goes, "I told my husband not to do that." And he made them drive back. We escorted him, drive back, pick up the trash that he had thrown off the side of the road and put it back in his car.
Jeez.
So, you know, that's the pride that those people take in their country. It's really quite incredible.
That sounds like an amazing place to visit.
It is. It is. It's one of my favorite. Well, I can't say that. They're all. I've had such good experiences. Again,
I've been trying to nail you down on all this stuff. Where's your favorite?
Yeah.
But what country has the best food, do you think?
In the bush or in the city?
In the bush.
In the bush, probably South Africa. They have the best wine, that's for sure.
The best wine?
Wine, yeah. South African wine is world famous.
And in the city, you also said Johannesburg had
Cape Town.
Cape Town.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, they have a great wine industry. It's funny, I'm from the Bay Area, so I used to go to Napa and, you know, as a kid and stuff, and you think, wow.
You used to drink as a kid in the Bay Area.
This wine's like 50 years old and stuff. It's really great. You know, their wineries are from the 1600s because it's fascinating is that in the old days, sailors used to get scurvy. So the Brits would give their sailors lemons and limes. That's why they're called limeys, right?
Yeah.
The Dutch, they gave their sailors wine to combat scurvy. So they built these wine estates in South Africa because that was a port of call, so they could give wine to take on board to give to the sailors and stuff.
You don't really hear about South African wine, huh?
Oh, you do? Oh, yeah.
I'm not a wine guy.
Yeah.
I'm a whiskey guy.
Pinotage is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so, yeah, I would
You have
say
to bring a bottle to the club one night
I will do that.
when we actually open
Done.
again.
And you know what? Promise. The first day we're back running, I'm bringing a bottle of Pinotage.
It's going to be a pretty popular night.
It's going to be a huge night. And again, as I tell members of the club who are watching this, you got to see what these guys have done. It's amazing.
Yeah, we're pretty proud of it. It's looking
be.
pretty good. Like the exhibits, you know, we just have a phenomenal amount of stuff here, and a lot of it was in a drawer or in a box or in a closet crammed in.
Yeah.
And it's not like we don't have the space. It's just
No, as I said, now you can sort of see what we have. It's really quite incredible. Yeah.
So tell me about some of these. Things
So yeah,
that
you asked me to bring some things. So
that looks like a walking stick. Is that just a walking stick?
it is, but it's a story behind it. These are called rungus. So this is sort of a ceremonial one. So if you're holding this, you get to speak. It's almost like a talking stick in certain ways, or the chief holds these. This is what most Masai carry, and it's a throwing club, actually.
For small game and stuff?
Yeah, and also as a weapon. And this was made for me by a guy named Jumpin' James, who's a Masai, who is really a great guy and a great character. And every time I see him, he gives me one of these. So I have several of those. This is one of my most amazing pride possessions. So this is a family heirloom of a Masai walking stick that was given to me by the son of a Masai chief in the Namanga area in Kenya. And on my blog someplace, there's a picture of me in full Masai regalia carrying this stick and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a real affinity for the Masai through Patrick. So I met Patrick when he was in his mid-20s. He was just finishing middle school, because as a kid he went to school and then his dad died and he had to leave to take care of his family. And 12 years later he goes back to school, sits down, and the headmaster says, "What are you doing here?" And he says, "I'm here for an education." The headmaster says, "No, you can't do that." He says, "I'm not leaving until you give me an education." Patrick was what they call an age sect chief. He was the leader of all the Masai who were initiated at a certain time. He had like responsibility of like 4,000 Masai warriors.
For like the age group.
Settling problems and disputes and stuff like that. So when I met Patrick, he was actually, I take it back, he was actually in high school, and he said, you know, my real dream is to go to college. And he so impressed me. I said, if you want to go to college, you're going to go to college. And so he graduated from United States International University in Nairobi. And I went to his graduation, and it was me, his wife, and his mom. And it was probably as proud a moment as seeing my own kids graduate. And I thought, this is really lovely, but it's too bad all of his friends couldn't be here to join him. We walked off campus, and all of a sudden, his entire village had gotten up at 3 o'clock in the morning and traveled down to Nairobi, traveled north to Nairobi for 3-hour journey and we had a party in the middle of the streets of Nairobi celebrating his graduation and stuff. It was great.
That's cool.
Yeah, and then he went to work for the Kenyan Parliament. So during the week, he'd live in Nairobi as an analyst, and then he would go home, live in a traditional boma, and take care of his cows and his goats. And then when the government changed, he lost that job and now runs an anti-poaching initiative where he's training rangers. And I've actually gone to go out on all-night patrol with them and sleep out with them and stuff, which is great.
That's interesting. What does that look like? Because these guys are out there basically looking, they're probably stalking like high-value game so that they can find the poachers that are going after it, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, they've got but poachers are dangerous, and the animals are probably dangerous too.
Yeah.
What does it look like when they actually encounter poachers? Do they just have to go out in such force that like?
No, here's where they are. The poaching is less about like elephant ivory and rhino tusks, and it's more about local bushmeat trade, where they're killing wildlife and selling the meat illegally. The night I went out, we didn't encounter any poachers. We did break up a illegal charcoal making ring where guys were cutting down trees and making charcoal to sell. They were gone. They left the women holding the bag, but it was funny. We found this charcoal pit and it was still warm, so we walked up to the local village and there were no men left in the village. They had gotten word that we were coming and they left. But what the rangers do, and again, this is different between, say, how we handle things and how we'd send in law enforcement to kick ass, make some arrests, and bust some heads, right? They're more about education. They're more about, you can't do this. And here's why. You know, first of all, if you kill the animals, there's going to be no more animals. Number two is, if this is an area that's known for killing animals and stuff like that, tourists aren't going to come. And if tourists don't come, they don't bring you any money. If they don't bring you any money, you can't feed your family. So don't poach. And so that's...
I mean, it's true, right? And normally they get that message across, because I feel like...
Sometimes, like Patrick was telling me one time, he was laughing because there was a guy who didn't get the message. So they took him to court, and they didn't throw him in jail because that's not going to do any good. So what'd they do? They seized his motorbike, so he had no way of getting around anymore. You know, so he learned, if I want my motorbike back, I got to stop poaching. And so, you know, it's a different way of handling disputes. Sure, there's violence, and don't get me wrong, people go to jail and all that kind of stuff, but there's at least a first attempt to educate and tell people. And one of the things Patrick has done, in fact, there was just an article, is he's got, I've met about half a dozen or so of them, but he's got a group called the Lionesses. These are women rangers, and they're really effective because they can go sit down with the women in a village.
They get the story.
Yeah, and they get the real story about what's going on and stuff, which is really quite incredible. And I wouldn't want to mess with them.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, hey, let's take some questions from that chat. Andy, what do we have in the chat?
Yes, sir. Well, good evening, folks. We've got a good number of questions tonight. Pretty lively party in the chat.
I figured it would be.
A lot of lawyers, incidentally, asking to find out how to be a lawyer and an adventurer. So we'll get to hear
Stop
from
being
that.
a lawyer and start being an adventurer, right?
Or do both. I know our first question, which comes from Parviz Malakuti, says, fellow lawyer here, would love to hear your recommendations for living an adventurer's lifestyle as a lawyer.
Wow, that's a great question. I think it's about balance. You know, lawyers, we think about time all the time because that's how we bill people.
Like 60 billable hours a week,
and
right?
Stuff like that.
Get it done.
So I think what you need to do is you just need to sort of look at your schedule and balance your life to say, okay, I don't need to bill 60 hours. I could bill 40 hours, you know, or I'm going to always take 2 weeks off, or I'm going to take an afternoon off, or whatever it may be. And I think you just have to do that. One of the things, if I can give any advice on, is when I first did my first safaris as a tourist, I used to freak out that I would be away from the office and that the world would go to hell in a handbasket. And then after my second safari, I came back and it was like, the world did not end.
Yeah.
Clients did not, leave me because I had advised them ahead of time. And so it will all be okay. You're not gone that long. And unless there's like an emergency and you have someone local to at least hold on until you get back, you can go away. And I think we as lawyers sometimes are fearful of going away, that something's gonna happen. It'll be okay, I guess is what I would say.
Well, I think, that not just for lawyers, but I think anybody, it's a realization that definitely hits your ego, right?
Yes.
Because the fact of the matter is whatever you're into, whatever you're doing, however important you are, if you died tomorrow, there's going to be people that are sad. There's going to be some things that get done differently, but the world's going to go on.
True.
and when you come to that realization that, like, if I died, like the world would go on, I mean, that's an ego hit, right? But it's a sobering thing.
And another way to look at it is, if you're lying on your deathbed, do you wish you had more billable hours, or do you wish you'd gone to Africa?
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing to always keep in your mind. And I think that's important. But yeah, I mean, just do it, I guess would be my advice,
That's always the advice, and it's always good advice. Next one, Andy.
Next question comes from Jeffrey Nadrich, and Jeff wants to know, another fellow lawyer, very happy to hear you, Alan. I'm living vicariously through you right now.
Thank you.
And no question there, in fact. Oh, well. David Grober actually gets the next question, and he says, Alan, do you know or have worked with Derek and Beverly Joubert?
Joubert. Yes.
And have you ever gone to the Jackson Hole Wildlife Film Festival?
I have not gone to the Jackson Hole Wildlife Film Festival, but I know Derek and Beverly. In fact, I saw Derek a year ago in Cape Town. In fact, Derek and I were trying to put together, so this year I was supposed to leave April 4th to go to Kenya to see Patrick, and then I was going to South Africa with a bunch of veterinarians, and we were going to dart rhinos and notch their ears and do research, or they were going to do that. And I was going to try and do that with Derek at his place, but unfortunately we couldn't work out. But yeah, and I highly commend people to see Derek's films, The Last Lion and The Soul of the Elephant, which are two films that Derek made that are just unbelievable, spectacular. Yeah, David, he's a great filmmaker. And a story about them, they live in Botswana, and they were out filming, and Beverly accidentally stumbled upon a Cape buffalo. And they are just nasty, and it gored her from basically here to here.
Jeez.
And Derek literally had to go and get her off the horn, and he got gored, not as seriously, but Beverly amazingly survived. And
Jeez.
yeah, her story's quite incredible. Yeah, you can Google them on 60 Minutes too. They're quite an incredible pair.
That's cool. We should do some screenings at the club of those films.
We should. They're just,
Yeah.
The Last Lion will bring tears to your eyes. I mean, it's just an incredible they followed this female lioness who got kicked out of the pride basically with her three cubs, and learned to survive on her own, and it's remarkable.
All right, next question, Andy.
Next question comes from Bernie Harris, member in the club, as was David Grober, who asked the last question.
Yeah.
And Bernie wants to know, Alan, do you use aviation, balloons, airplanes, etc., in your excursions? That is, do you carry participants around an aircraft for sightseeing and not just for logistics?
That's a good question because you talked about logistics.
Yeah.
And I saw a video where people were doing a balloon ride over the Wildebeest.
Yes. So I do hot air ballooning. And in Rwanda, you can do some helicopter touring. And in Zambia, you can do some helicopter touring over Victoria Falls. So yes. And I'll tell you, even though it's transport, the flight from Chobe Game Lodge in Botswana to the Okavango Delta is extremely scenic because you're flying over this vast area and you look down, you see elephants. And then I've also had scenic flights up the Skeleton Coast of Namibia, which is pretty spectacular. So
The Skeleton Coast?
The Skeleton Coast, yeah. There are a lot of shipwrecks and stuff happen there.
Oh, interesting. There's diving?
Not there, but there's great diving in Zanzibar and Mozambique in Africa, yeah.
Cool. Next question, please.
See, it's one of those things where I learned, somebody says, yeah, I'm a diver. Oh, well, if you're a diver, then we need to go here and here, yeah.
Doesn't have to be part of the experience, but
But
if
it
there's
can
something
be.
cool,
Yeah.
I'll slap on a tank and go.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Next question, please.
Next question comes from David Grober again. David wants to know, have you done the 110-meter bungee off the bridge over the Zambezi, frayed rope and all?
No, I have not, nor have I done the one in South Africa either, only because of lack of time, but it is on my bucket list to do.
I don't know. I've always wanted to go bungee jumping, but I've been close to people bungee jumping. Like I've watched them do it. How? I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
That freaks me out. I want to say that I've done it. I want to do it, but standing there.
And I may have gotten to the age where I may not, but yeah, I'd probably still
really
do it.
helps like spread out those discs.
Yeah,
and
that
stuff.
could be good for my back.
Yeah, it really just crack out all those vertebrae.
Yeah.
Put them back into place. All right, next question, please.
Next question comes from Reggie Sully, and Reggie wants to know, seeing the permit cost for the gorilla tours is $1,500 per day, how many days do people generally go for?
1, but you are guaranteed to see gorillas. So you're not going to go and not see gorillas.
Yeah.
That's one of the things is you always see gorillas. It used to be you buy a permit, you may not see gorillas that day, but no, the way it's organized now, you will definitely see gorillas.
Cool.
Great. Next question comes from Parviz Malakuti again. And Parviz wants to know, is it possible to go on the gorilla tours for a tenth of a day? Asking for a friend.
Unfortunately not, but you could go to Uganda for $700.
It's just not as good.
No, it's not the question of being as good. The problem is, to get to the gorillas in Rwanda, it's a 3-hour drive on a good road. Mm-hmm. To get to see the gorillas in Uganda, it's either an expensive plane flight down or a 7-hour horrible drive down
What
there.
is the plane flight cost?
I don't, again, it's one of those questions, I don't know off the top of my head, but it almost makes it equivalent in cost.
Yeah.
That's the challenge. I mean, but Uganda is a beautiful country. If you're a birder, Uganda is incredible. Murchison Falls area and stuff like that is really great.
I'm not a birder, but I can imagine that there's some. There's probably some interesting birds.
There is,
it's
and
more
it's
of an
funny.
Amazon thing, but
Yeah, but after you've seen your 10,000th zebra or wildebeest, you get into the birds there. They're pretty incredible.
I'm a bird person now.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, next question, please.
Next question comes from Jay Foonberg, another member. Is any part of Africa currently open for U.S. citizens to go to?
The answer is yes. Tanzania is open, but the problem is for Americans, but you can't get there. If you could get yourself there, you could go on safari in Tanzania.
What do you mean? Like,
you can't leave in this country. You can't fly out internationally.
You can't?
Not to. There's no flights, I think, unless you can get yourself to maybe the Middle East or something. But Europeans don't want us right now either, or they'll quarantine you, for
so the
for 2
American
weeks.
passport can't get out.
Yeah. Yes.
Like I could go to Mexico. Could I get a?
You probably
from
could.
Tijuana International Airport.
Probably could.
But the American passport's going to hold me back.
Or they may quarantine you when you get there. But not in Tanzania. Tanzania, you will not be quarantined. You just need a certificate showing that you tested negative for COVID within the last 72 hours.
I've heard Iceland actually has a good system going on right now. I read that if you go into Iceland, you've got a choice to do the COVID test.
Right.
And then they clear you in a couple hours. So you pay like $150 or whatever it is, and they test you right in the airport, and they clear you.
Wow.
Go about your business. Or you can refuse the test.
Yeah.
At which point you're quarantined for 2 weeks.
Right. And you can't go sightseeing. So
Yeah.
to answer your question, Jay, I would say yes to Tanzania.
So you got to get yourself to Tanzania.
You got to get yourself to Tanzania. And the other countries, for example, Rwanda is open, but once you land, you have to take you have to have a certificate that you were tested in the last 72 hours. Then you get tested there. Then you get quarantined for 3 days at your expense. Then, if you want to go see the gorillas, you got to get tested again. Because one of the things that's very scary for me is, gorillas are 97% genetically the same as we are. If we gave them COVID, we could kill the entire population of gorillas. So they're very, very, very careful about who gets to go now.
I don't know. Maybe kill a gorilla.
Well, if it spreads.
But whatever you consider like the death rate of COVID to be, it's not 10%.
But do you know what it is for gorillas?
That's true. You're right.
So that's
You're right.
that's the fear.
Yeah, I guess that's always the case.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Viruses do seem to be pretty species specific.
Yeah. So
they're very.
But I don't think
targeted.
anybody wants to find out how gorillas would react.
I mean, it's interesting to contemplate. Have we done that? I mean, we've definitely done that to people groups, right? We've definitely wandered in and given everybody smallpox or measles or the flu. But have we ever done? Do you think we've ever done that to a species as people? And we just didn't.
Yeah,
we just weren't paying attention.
Because
we've got a long history.
But it's funny you raise that issue. People say, yeah, but Africa, I heard it's going to explode and it's going to be horrible and all that. Well, first of all, it hasn't been yet. And I will concede that they don't test like we do here or have the reporting capabilities we do. But my counter argument to that is they've been through this already with Ebola. And Ebola, if you got Ebola, you died. You know? And so that's why, like, Uganda just took the playbook of preventing people from the Congo coming in, which is where Ebola's flashpoint was, and applied it to COVID, and kept their cases down. So, yeah.
All right.
Tanzania.
Next question. We got some questions to get through here. We got a lot in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely.
That means you're an interesting person.
Well, thank you.
People are loving it. Next question comes from Eileen Finkelstein. And Eileen wants to know, can you accommodate vegetarians on your trips?
Yes.
Not at the carnivore, but.
No. Hi, Eileen. First of all, I got to give a shout out to Eileen. Eileen is an incredible film editor, and she is helping me put together a series of 1 to 2 minute videos that I'm going to release in the next few weeks on the who, what, where, when, why, and how of planning a safari. And Eileen's been incredible putting it together. But to answer your question, I have done vegetarian. In one family of 6, I had a vegetarian, a vegan, a pescatarian, a lactose intolerant, and a regular eater.
In one family.
In one family. So yes.
I've
even done kosher.
Like, how hard did you roll your eyes?
I did.
No, I don't want to throw your clients under the bus.
No,
but I would roll my eyes
love,
so hard at that. I'd be like, what?
I love challenges like that. It's fun. And the other thing, again, because tourism is so important, people are so accommodating there.
Yeah.
They may not understand why they can't eat bread, but they're okay with it,
Yeah.
And so yeah, vegetarian's easy. Yeah, because most of them, meat's expensive, so most of them are vegetarians most of the days of the week anyway.
Yeah. All right, next question.
Next question comes from Parviz Malakuti again, and Parviz wants to know, Alan, do you have grandkids? And if so, how did your street cred do when they saw your tattoo?
I don't have grandkids. I have kids, but the story about my tattoo, if you want to know my street cred, my mom hates tattoos with a passion. So here I am in my 60s telling my mom, hey, I got something to tell you. What? I got a tattoo. Long pause. Did it hurt? Yeah. Good. And hung up the phone.
All right, next question.
Next question comes from Eileen Finkelstein again, and Eileen wants to know, did you or can you talk about the dynamics of white Americans and black Africans, and if there are any latent colonialist issues you ever had to deal with?
No. I would say one of the interesting experiences that I've had is in South Africa when I've been traveling with somebody. I'm very interested in politics, so I will ask questions, about apartheid and stuff. And, they'll sit there and explain how bad things were and stuff like that. And I'll go, yeah, we had apartheid in the United States. And they go, no, you didn't. I go, yeah, we did. And they go, no, impossible. And then I'd pick up my phone and I would Google images, of white-only drinking fountains and, white-only restaurants or, colored waiting rooms. Mm-hmm. And it would blow their minds that existed in the United States. They had no idea. And the reason that we had that discussion was because they were of the opinion it'll never change. And this was especially true when I was traveling when Obama was president. And it's like, wow, well, if you guys could make that progress, there's hope for us in South Africa. I would say South Africa definitely has remnants of colonialism and apartheid, even though there is no longer exists. But I have a vice president of sales, Bella, who is from Johannesburg, and we've done travel shows where I've almost had to punch a guy because he was in the booth across from us. He was from South Africa, and he would say "Hi, girlie" to her, and it's like, no. Her name's Bella, kind of thing. And I didn't mean anything by it. Yeah, you did. Kind of thing. But no, I mean, there really isn't that feeling. And now, understand, I'm in the tourist business, and we're important to their livelihood and economy and stuff. But they really, I don't think in many of the countries other than South Africa, they didn't have those kinds of issues.
Yeah.
They run everything now, so it's fine.
I heard this interview, and this was very sobering when I heard this. This lady said, she was talking about conflict, race conflict stuff, and she's like, y'all are lucky that we just want equality and not revenge.
Yeah.
And that was pretty sobering. That was like, yeah. Yeah, man, like that's
definitely. Yeah.
So it sounds like from what you've told me about your experiences in Africa is, lots of reconciliation and, restorative justice.
That was black killing blacks.
Yeah, it was. But, the forgiveness that has had to go on that continent in general, like across, because so many terrible things have happened to Africa. And the fact that they're so, calm about it and able to move on and be peaceful and everything.
Interesting, with 3 other members of the club, I went to Benin, Togo, and Burkina Faso in West Africa to view voodoo ceremonies. One of the interesting things that
voodoo, who'd you go with? Did you go with
Mike Waltney, Pierre, and Jim Dorsey. Yeah.
Okay, and Jim.
And one of the things that I learned that I didn't know was that the Portuguese were really bad actors in the whole slave trade thing, but they hired other tribes to capture other tribes to sell the slavery. Yeah. So they were complicit in many ways in the slave trade. So they understand that. But yeah, I mean, it's just I'm trying to think. I mean, I'm married to a black woman, so I have biracial cousins and stuff. So I'm sort of sensitive very sensitive to any kind of bigotry or racism and stuff, but I've never really experienced it, you know? And again, I'm not seeing all the undercurrents of society everywhere, you know? I only see a certain part of Africa, and I'm the first to admit that, but I just don't see it, you know? Everybody treats each other with respect.
Yeah, I think when you have a past like that, if you want to move forward, I think to a certain extent, there's only one way to move forward, and that's to, you know, forgive and not necessarily not forgive and forget,
but
right?
forgive.
But forgive.
Yeah.
And that's the only way you can get on, you know.
But I also think too, it's that, you know, if you're and I can't talk to it really, it's not fair, but if I was an African American and I go to Africa, I'm now in the majority, you know, I'm not a minority anymore. And so you get that feeling, you know. I mean, I'm Jewish, and I remember the first time I went to Israel, you know, and all of a sudden, wow, everybody around here, you know, I wasn't a minority any, you know. I grew up in a neighborhood with only 13 Jewish kids, so it was like I was you know, we were unusual in that in that regard. So
that's interesting. All right, next question.
Next question comes from Chuck Jonke, another member
Hey,
here.
Chuck.
Fantastic presentation, Alan. Chuck
Thank you.
here. Are there any cool African guitarists you would recommend?
Yeah, you got to take Chuck around Africa.
I gotta ask Chuck that question. You know, the banjo actually comes from Africa.
Really?
Yeah. Am I right about that, Chuck? I think I am. There's some great African music. I don't know about guitarists, but there's some great African music. I mean, I'm laughing because he's not quoting African guitarist, but there's a famous American guitarist who was huge in South Africa named Rodriguez. He was not known here, but he was a superstar in Africa.
What style did he play?
He played like Bruce Springsteen and Dylan kind of thing.
Oh, interesting.
But there's some great music out of West Africa and Nigeria and then in Zanzibar there's a jazz festival every year that I have not been to, but I've heard is pretty cool. And then I've been very fortunate to sit down with some African musicians in South Africa. Actually, as I told you, one of the experiences was having lunch at this guy's house, Hilton, and you know, Hilton sat there and played piano for me and stuff. And he was an incredible jazz composer and stuff, and it was really great. So yeah, there's a lot of good music there, as you probably know, Chuck.
Yeah, you're like, hey, Chuck, I should ask you this
exactly.
question, right? All right, next question. Last question.
Final question
Final
of the night,
question
folks.
of the evening.
There are some questions have come in since then. If you want to have those answered, very sorry we're not going to get to them tonight, but reach out to Alan on his YouTube channel. The link is in the description, or on his blog, which will also be in the description. But the last question of the night is, there are a lot of lawyers in the Adventurers Club. It seems to be sort of a trend that lawyers seem to gravitate toward adventure.
Is this your question, Andy, or is this a question in the chat?
This one might be a little bit more personal. My question is, why do you think that is, Alan?
Yeah, why do you think we got so many lawyers around here?
Because we breed like rats, I think. There's too many of us.
That's why you quit, right?
Yeah. Well, no, it really wasn't the reason. I mean, I enjoyed being a lawyer. I didn't love being a lawyer, and I think, I mean, literally, my first days in Africa was, I think, probably, if I look back, was like, I got to figure out a way to combine this. I didn't know how, and it took me, 8 years to figure that part out. I think the only theory that I have is that lawyers know lawyers. So, if I'm a lawyer and I go, hey, come to the club, kind of thing, that may be a reason to attract. But yeah, we should probably get some diversity in here in more ways than one.
Well, Andy's trying to become a lawyer because he saw so many adventurer lawyers, and he thought that there was a magic formula to it.
Let me try and talk you out of that.
All right. Well, hey, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Tonight,
this was
Alan.
a blast.
This was great.
Appreciate it.
We appreciate you coming in. Thank you guys for watching. We're doing this every week until who knows when. So next week we've got Phoebe Piper coming in to talk about Alaska dog sledding.
Cool.
She went up there. Fascinating person. She's been around the club quite a bit. She left home, joined the circus, went up, started doing some dogs, like running dog sled teams and expeditions and stuff like that, and then
Neat.
did some time as a rancher, like as a cowgirl, I guess, herding cattle up in Montana, and then now she's down here doing beekeeping. She beekeeps. She's like a professional beekeeper.
Oh, I'm tuning in next week.
Yeah,
for
so
that.
next week's going to be a great show. So hope to see you guys all next week. Don't forget to like and subscribe our channel. And thank you for joining us. My name is Rich Mayfield, number 1211, signing off. See you guys later.
Thank you.